It's my great pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day. Lieutenant General Arnie Bunch is the military deputy in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition. He oversees research and development, test, procurement, and modernization of Air Force systems with a value annually of $32 billion. General Bunch has a very diverse background. B-52 pilot, aircraft commander, test pilot. He's commanded twice at the wing level, twice at the center level, a PEO for fighter and bombers, served at the Air Force Test Center as the commander, and the commander of the Air Force Security Assistance Center, which does our FMS cases. General Bunch is a huge, huge supporter of transformation and reform for acquisition. We couldn't be asking for a better military deputy in this era. Like I said yesterday, we've got the right people in the right place at the right time. General Bunch is one of those leaders. Again, we will lead our way out of this problem. General Bunch is leading every day. You'll hear his points a little bit later and all the things that he and Ms. Costello are doing in the acquisition lane to try to get to an agile mentality of getting capability out there faster in a more cost-effective way. And you'll hear some of the initiatives that they're doing. Without further ado, it is my distinct honor to introduce a great friend and great champion for us, Lieutenant General Arnie Bunch.
Thank you. So good morning. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with us this morning. I heard it was a really big group. I heard it was the largest tech gathering in the Air Force, so I spent extra time on my hair this morning just to make sure that I was ready to go. So it is odd for me to be speaking at something with IT and cyber. If you actually go back and look at the folks that have worked with me before, there is a read ahead before I get there that explains how badly I abuse the cyber stuff that I get, how it can only happen to me and no one can explain it, and to include even as late as last week. I even found out that when I was the test center commander, they made the bold assessment to put me on the beta test group, which meant I had a different configuration than the execs and everybody else in the front office. And if you are a young IT person thinking about that, don't think about it anymore. That does not work out very well. So I got to start with a story from even yesterday's flight down here. I flew in last night, and I got into Atlanta, and I got on the airplane to come here. I ended up sitting beside a gentleman who, and I was in my normal travel gear, which is a pair of shorts, a University of Tennessee polo shirt. Yeah, I know, that's unfamiliar here. And a pair of sandals. And he immediately said, I can't believe I got to sit beside a Rocky Top guy. He was a war chicken guy. Sorry for anybody that's offended by that. But then I started talking to him. And when I talked to him, I found out this gentleman, he had a Marine Corps hat on. He is a Marine, even though he's retired quite a few years back. Had rescued an airman on the side of a mountain in Vietnam in a helicopter, where the rotor on top of the helicopter was cutting down parts of the tree in front. The tail rotor was cutting up parts of the bush behind. And he was landing in elephant grass that was as tall as the individual that he was trying to rescue. Talked about how much he loved being in the military and what it was like to serve his country. Then went on to tell me that his son was a Marine and had been a fighter pilot and had been a squadron commander. And how that a squadron commander job was the greatest job in the world, to which I said, squadron command is a great command job. It's a great leadership opportunity. You get to be right there with all your people and you get to understand who they are and you know many of them. He then kind of burst my bubble a little bit. He proceeded to inform me that any command job above that, and if you listen to my resume, I've actually held 5 of those, was nothing more than sprinkling water on forest fires, and it was all political. I said, well, I like to think maybe it's a little bit more than that. And then he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I'm in acquisition. And he said, so what does that mean? And I said, well, what we buy in the Air Force, we make sure that we buy it, we get it out to the warfighter, and we get it out there, and it does what we need it to do. To which he proceeded to say, so you're a loggy. So I learned a lot in a 30-minute flight from Atlanta yesterday that makes me question a lot of things that I've done. But today is really important. Because in a lot of cases, we get too caught up in what our job titles are, and what we really need to remember is what we're really focused on is getting something in the hands of the men and women that are really doing the mission. And it's not people like me sitting in the five-sided building. So the first thing and the most important thing you'll hear me say today is thanks. For those that are doing the acquisitions and working to develop and put systems in the field, and for our industry partners, thank you. We have the most dominant Air Force the world has ever seen. Many would argue the most dominant military force the world has ever seen. And a lot of that goes to you for the hard work you put in to get those systems out in the field. So from Ms. Costello and I and the leadership team of the acquisition community, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we have a challenge that we have to address and we have to embrace and we have to tackle. We have been at war for 26 years. We went to the Gulf, and in many cases, we've never come home. The world has watched us employ air power in ways that no one ever envisioned or dreamed were possible. They have watched, and they have adopted, and they have adapted. They have adopted many of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. They've adopted many of our technologies, either through development on their own or other means. And they have adapted. They've adapted their strategies so that they can attack those areas that we depend on, or they can make us stand off farther so that it makes it much more challenging for us to go do this nation's bidding. So the challenge to us is how do we more rapidly move forward in some of these technology areas so that we can remain the world's most dominant air force, and we can continue to go do whatever this nation needs. So what I'm going to talk about today, I got a couple of different veins that I'm going to run into. The first thing I'm going to do is talk about some of the efforts that we have going on writ large within the acquisition community to try to speed some things up. Many of those are going to apply into the cyber and the IT worlds, and it'll give you an idea of where we're trying to drive the boat. And I'm going to talk about a couple of challenge areas that we've got, cybersecurity and software development. And then I'm going to tell you what we're doing in some of those areas, and then I'll close out. Okay, so that's a rough thumbnail sketch for those who have to have 3 main points, and you're tracking whether the general really went to SOS and learned any of that stuff. I'm kind of close to that, okay? So you can downgrade me in the critiques if you want to. I'm okay with that. And in the end, what I'll do is I'll open it up and I'll try to answer your questions, because I welcome that. And I've already been told there's a voice from God that comes down with your questions. And I'm told, Dash, that it's a female voice. So there you go. So that's my compadre in the building, Dash Jameson there. So what are we really trying to do to speed things up? The first thing we want to do is actually embrace those things that Congress has given us the authorities to go do. If you've been reading the National Defense Acts that have been coming out, they've been pushing us to go faster. They've given us more authorities in rapid fielding and rapid prototyping. They're giving some flexibility on budget dollars and how we can use in certain areas. They're changing around a lot of the things. A lot of those things are focused on us. Some of the policies for some of those haven't come out quite as quickly as folks like myself would really like. So we're kind of going off on our own and doing some of these to meet the intent of Congress without really waiting around for Congress to give, for someone above us to give us all the right direction. So what we really want to do is, Congress wants us to do rapid fielding, rapid prototyping, and do these other activities. We're great with that. Let's figure out how to embrace it and work with the community and move out. So that's the first thing we're trying to do is understand the authorities we've got and capitalize on all those authorities that we already have. The other one that Ms. Costello and I are really focused on is trying to make sure we streamline everything we can, and we push authorities to the lowest level. Because of some activities that had happened in the past, probably when some Lieutenant Colonel Bunch made a decision along the way, the direction that we've been given is the direction when I came into this job was that all decisions were held at the PEO level. And they had to be the milestone decision authority, and really below the PEO, everything had to funnel up. Major Bunch remembers Colonel McCarter running programs in the B1 program when I was executing. And the PEOs asked for it, and we go, that's a great idea. So right now, of all of our smaller dollar threshold programs, 68% of those are below the PEO so that we can streamline. That ends up freeing up the PEO's time so that they can focus on higher priority and bigger items. It allows us to go faster because it takes time to get to the PEO. No offense to the PEOs. It takes time to get to me, I know. What it also does is it creates more job satisfaction for our colonels and our GS-15s and our people who get these authorities. So 68% is a pretty big number. I never expect it to be 100%. There are certain programs that are in portfolios like Steve Wirtz, where he's managing some critical systems that if one goes wrong, 5 go wrong. He hadn't delegated those. So I'm fine with that. But what we want are the PEOs to think about those things, because if we can take those steps to streamline and go faster, that's good. The other one that we are, now there is a catch with this. I need to say this right up front. I should have said it probably already. If you're an acquisition person right now with all that Congress is doing and everything that we're trying to do to streamline, we have caught the bus. Meaning we've been chasing the bus, trying to get authorities, trying to get the ability to go do certain things. We have caught the bus. We now have to execute. Okay, so there's a challenge that comes with this. We have an opportunity, but we have to deliver on those promises. Another thing that Ms. Costello and I are really pushing is the Congress wants us to be the milestone decision authority for programs within the Air Force. We're pushing hard to keep those. We want to try to get everything into the Air Force that we can. We have processes that make that work, and we want to embrace that and continue to execute along those lines. Open systems architectures and modularity. The B-21